Okay, so yeah, welcome back. So now I'm going to discuss the nuclei of the vagus nerve. As I told you before, the vagus nerve is the most complex of all the cranial nerves. And as I said before in the last video, I said that the vagus nerve has 4 different nuclei that are lying within the medulla oblongata. And so these nuclei are, or they include spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, dorsal vagal nucleus, nucleus obstructus solitarius, and nucleus ambiguus. So now let me take each of these nucleus and see what are the kind of information that are going into that nucleus or coming out of that nucleus. So if I now take, the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, as I told you, this is purely sensory kind of, nucleus. So sensation from, the external ear, that is the auricle, especially area around the tragus, including the area behind the pinna, as well as the flow of the external auditory meatus, plus the external surface of the tympanic membrane. All this sensory information of pain, temperature, touch, and pressure, they have been taken, through this auricular branch of the vagus nerve. And so it passes into the vagus nerve. It goes there and passes through both the inferior and superior vagal ganglia before finally it enters into the jugular foramen. Suffice to say that the vagus nerve comes out of the cranial cavity through the jugular foramen. If you can remember, I made a mention that there are 2 more nerves that are also lying, inside the jugular foramen. So there are 3 nerves apart from this one. We have the glossopharyngeal nerve, which I discussed with you. We also discussed the spinal accessory nerve together with this vagus nerve. So there are 3 cranial nerves that are coming out of the jugular foramen. So the vagus nerve, as it comes out from the jugular foramen, it relates with, it has 2, ganglia. One that is lying either inside or immediately outside the jugular foramen. That is the superior vagal ganglion, and the other one is the inferior vagal ganglion that is just lying inferior to the jugular foramen. So occasionally this ganglion may lie within the jugular foramen or maybe immediately below the jugular foramen. So the 2 ganglia may all be outside the jugular foramen. So this auricular branch that is carrying this sensation from the external ear, from the external auditory meatus, the flow of the external auditory meatus, from the tympanic membrane, all this information of pain, touch, temperature, and pressure, they pass through this auricular branch of this vagus nerve, passes through the inferior and superior vagal ganglion, passes through the jugular foramen before it finally reaches the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. Similarly, sensation that is also being carried out apart from this external ear and other areas related to that, there are also sensation of the mucosa of the larynx above and below the vocal cord. If you can remember your head and neck very well, there is an area responsible for the phonation, that is the vocal cord, that is being regulated by the laryngeal muscles. So area, the mucosa above the vocal cord is being supplied, the sensory information from the area above the vocal cord and sensory information below the area of vocal cord, they are also being taken through this, or to the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. So the area, the sensation of pain, temperature, touch, and pressure, and what have you, from the area above the vocal cord, this sensory information follows one of the branches of this one of the branches of the vagus nerve, what we call internal laryngeal division. So it goes along with the internal laryngeal nerve, and then it is taken into that spinal nucleus. Similarly, sensation from the area below the vocal cord, that is pain, touch, temperature, and pressure below the vocal cord, that information of that sensation follows the recurrent laryngeal nerve, and then it's also been taken into that area, that spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve before it finally go into the thalamus. Are you clear? So we have now seen that the sensory information above and below the vocal cord, those sensory information have been taken through the branches of the vagus nerve, that is through the internal laryngeal branch and through the recurrent laryngeal nerve. So the information has been taken down there. So that is that. Similarly, sensation of the pain and temperature, and what have you from the visceral, organs of the small and large intestine, those ones have also been taken through the branches, the parasympathetic branches that supply these organs. So they have also been taken through, this vagus nerve to the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. That is the visceral afferent fibers. Are you clear? So now we have seen that. So the next nucleus is the dorsal vagal nucleus. This dorsal vagal nucleus is parasympathetic to the most of the organs in the thorax and in the abdomen. So what are these organs? Organs in the thorax include all these trachea and the respiratory apparatus like the lungs. Then we also have the heart. So in the abdomen we have various organs: liver, gallbladder, spleen, pancreas, stomach, large intestine, and so on and so forth. So now the fibers, as they come from the dorsal vagal nucleus, they pass out from the jugular foramen, come through the superior and inferior vagal nucleus. As they come out, they enter from the neck, they enter into the thorax. From the thorax, they now start giving branches. There is what we call cardiac branches. These cardiac branches are three. You have one at the superior aspect of the heart. You have another one in the middle aspect of the heart. And then you have another branch at the lower aspect of the heart. The one above is what is called superior cardiac branch. The second one is what we call inferior cardiac branch. And the other one is the thoracic cardiac branch. All these contribute to the formation of the cardiac plexus around the heart so that they regulate the heart, beat. We have our SA node and, AV node. So all these are regulated by these branches, parasympathetic nerve fibers from the dorsal vagal nucleus down to the heart so that they form this plexus, that is the cardiac plexus. Similarly, from these fibers, some they go to the trachea and the two main bronchi so that they supply the mucosa there to secrete the mucus. That means they are secretomotor to the glands, mucous glands within the trachea and the main bronchi, as well as the bronchioles within the lungs. So they increase, they help in the secretion of the mucus there, and they are also, they regulate the contractions of the smooth muscles within the bronchioles and within the trachea, so that they cause what we call bronchoconstriction, so that to narrow down the, airway like that. So they are secretomotor, and also they help in the contraction of the smooth muscle fibers within the trachea and, the bronchioles and the main bronchi. So similarly, this dorsal vagal nucleus also supply fibers down to the gastrointestinal tract, apart from supplying fibers to the intrathoracic organs within the thorax. So the fibers from the dorsal vagal nucleus, they descend down to supply parasympathetic fibers to these intra-abdominal organs. You all know that in the abdomen and also in the thorax, we have our own esophagus. The fibers, some of the fibers, they supply the esophagus within the abdomen. They also supply the esophagus within the thorax, so that they form what we call esophageal plexus. So esophageal plexus is being formed, by the time these fibers descend from this dorsal vagal nucleus, so that they also regulate, the peristaltic movement of the esophagus. Because during swallowing, now the esophagus tends to make some peristaltic movement to allow the food to descend down into the stomach. So after formation of this, esophageal plexus around the esophagus, the nerve fibers descend, around the stomach. So once these fibers come closer to the stomach, the main trunk divides into two divisions: anterior division and posterior division. You will see that I put this in dotted line, the one that is lying posterior. And these posterior and anterior divisions, branches emanate from it to supply other structures around. All these structures, you will see like the kidney, the adrenal gland over the kidney, supplies also the pancreas, the pancreas itself. It also supplies the spleen, at the back of the stomach. And then it also supplies, the liver and the gallbladder. So all this, anterior division of and also other division before making the anterior and posterior division may also supply those internal organs. So it's like the major divisions, the major branches supplying the kidney, adrenal gland, gallbladder, and the liver, they come from the anterior division of this vagus nerve that comes towards the junction between the esophagus and the stomach. And so the posterior division also supplies, part of the stomach and also, part of the organs around. That means it supplies, we have another kidney around this side. So it supplies the kidney around the left-hand side, because it is, assume this anterior division is the right vagal division and the posterior division is the left vagal division. So this one supplies the areas of the organs around the left-hand side, while the anterior divisions supplies the organs around the right-hand side. Similarly, the fibers from the anterior division of this, vagal nerve, supplies the smaller intestine, the entire part of the smaller intestine, the appendix, the cecum, ascending colon, and some part of the transverse colon. So again, we also have another nucleus, that is the nucleus obstructus solitarius. This nucleus obstructus solitarius, is responsible for the taste sensation. You can remember that while I was discussing the glossopharyngeal nerve, I also discussed that nucleus. So the taste sensation now is being carried from the anterior aspect of the epiglottis and also from some part of the back of the posterior one-third of the tongue. That means part of the posterior one-third of the tongue, taste sensation from there, and also taste sensation from the anterior part of the esophagus, and also from the pharynx. All these taste informations are being carried through this, nerve fiber down to the nucleus obstructus solitarius. Similarly, the baroreceptors on the internal carotid artery and also from the arch of the aorta here, they are all being carried, sensation from the baroreceptors from the arch of the aorta and from the carotid sinus, and also from the carotid bodies lying between the internal carotid artery and external carotid artery. All this information, they also pass to the nucleus of tractus solitarius. So you can remember that also vagus nerve also, carries that information from. So that means information or regulation of blood pressure, as well as the, chemical component of the blood, carbon dioxide and oxygen in the circulation is being regulated by both vagus nerve and the glossopharyngeal nerve, but it's mainly glossopharyngeal nerve. The vagal contribution is a little bit less than that of the vagus nerve. So now we've seen this, and so the last nucleus is the nucleus ambiguus. This nucleus ambiguus is motor, and a little bit of it is sensory. So the nucleus ambiguus, the fibers from this nucleus, as they descend with the vagus nerve, with other fibers of the vagus nerve, they descend through the two nuclei. As soon as the fibers come out of the jugular foramen and out of these two ganglia, so there is a branch that first comes from this vagus nerve, from that nucleus. That is what is known as pharyngeal branch. So pharyngeal branch begins to emanate first from these fibers coming from the nucleus ambiguus. So this pharyngeal branch approaches the upper border of middle constrictor. There are some pharyngeal muscles, what you call superior constrictor, middle constrictor, and inferior constrictor. So the pharyngeal division of these fibers coming from the dorsal, from the nucleus ambiguus, comes towards the upper border of the middle constrictor, passes into the pharynx to supply all the muscles of the pharynx, except the stylopharyngeus that we said is being supplied by the glossopharyngeal nerve. So the second nerve that comes out of the nerve is the superior laryngeal nerve. This superior laryngeal nerve, it divides into internal laryngeal nerve and external laryngeal nerve. So the internal laryngeal nerve, it carries sensation, it is secretomotor to the mucous membrane, inside the larynx, and the area, the sensation around that area above the vocal cord area is also being taken through this internal laryngeal branch. So this internal laryngeal branch passes into the what we call thyroid membrane. So it enters there to carry this secretomotor activity and at the same time carry this sensation, because I said it's partly motor, partly sensory. The external laryngeal division is motor to one small muscle that originates from the cricoid cartilage and span upward to attach on the thyroid cartilage. And so this is what we call cricothyroid muscle. So this nerve supplies at times only these muscles, but occasionally it may also supply the inferior constrictor muscle. Are you clear? So occasionally it may only supply, it is mainly supplying this cricothyroid, and occasionally it may also supply the inferior thyroid muscles. So that is for the branches of the superior laryngeal nerve. So the main fibers coming from the nucleus ambiguus, as they pass down, I told you they hook round the subclavian artery in the right hand side, hooks round the arch of the aorta on the left hand side. So as these fibers hook round those structures on either side, it lies, the fibers, they go as what we call recurrent laryngeal nerve. So these recurrent laryngeal nerve fibers, they go and lie between the esophagus and the trachea, so that, they supply all the muscles of the larynx, except this muscle that I've just made mention, the cricothyroid, that is being supplied by the external division of the superior laryngeal nerve. That is the external laryngeal nerve. So the recurrent laryngeal nerve goes and supply all the muscles of the larynx, except the cricothyroid, that is being supplied by the external laryngeal nerve, a division of the superior laryngeal nerve. So similarly, the part of the recurrent laryngeal nerve is also sensory because it, carries sensation from the lower part of the vocal cord, all this pain, temperature, and what have you, from there, and then the sensation is being carried out, through, this, recurrent laryngeal nerve, and the fibers, they now get out of it to enter into the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. So now the remaining fibers here, they now descend down to join in the formation of the cardiac plexus. So the cardiac plexus is, is a very important plexus for the regulation of our heartbeat and other things like that. So it's like this parasympathetic supply, apart from supplying the gastrointestinal tract, you can see that it also supplies the glands associated with the gastrointestinal tract, because liver is a gland, so it is being supplied by these parasympathetic fibers. The gallbladder is also being supplied by that. Pancreas is also a gland, and so on and so forth. So the remaining part of the large intestine, somebody may ask, those ones are being supplied by the pelvic plexus. If you can remember, in the pelvic cavity, that's what you call S2, 3, and 4, the sacral outflow of the parasympathetic fibers. Those ones, they supply the pelvic organs like the uterus, the descending colon, rectum, and anal canal, and so on and so forth. But ovaries and testicles, ironically, they have been supplied by these fibers coming from the dorsal vagal nucleus. Are you clear? So that is the exception. So the ovaries have been supplied by these fibers going, supplying this, probably because they developed from the posterior abdominal wall during embryology. You get my point? That's it.